They cut through a glass vitrine like surgeons and walked out with a painting no longer the size of framed canvas but the size of a legend. It vanished before the alarms finished their first beep. No smoke. No dramatic smash. Just a calm, methodical removal of masterpieces from their pedestals. Walked past stunned guards and bewildered visitors, and then poof gone. As if the city had exhaled, and the art simply never existed. In its place, empty frames, puzzled museum staff, and a security recording that would come to look less like a solution than a confession to how vulnerable even the world's most cherished treasures were. This was not a simple burglary. This was a theft that read like a plan drawn in the margins of a spy. Inside knowledge, and an ability to disappear into the normal rhythm of an urban night. The whole was staggering. Paintings by masters, sculptures, and artifacts, with a combined insured value in the hundreds of millions. And then something stranger still, the thieves left almost no trace. And decades later, many works remain. Missing lives were ruined and a cultural wound was left wide open. How did thieves steal $500 million in art and get away with it? To understand how one of the largest art thefts in modern history unfolded, you have to enter two worlds at once. The luminous cultured universe of museums and collectors and the shadow network of smugglers, fences and opportunists who traffic in stolen beauty. Art museums are paradoxes. They are temples of permanence for objects that are fragile by nature: canvas, pigment, plaster, and bronze. Museums spend millions to conserve, insure, and display art. The objects are priceless to the public imagination and often insured for staggering sums. But the trade-offs are significant. Museums are open to the public. They welcome thousands of visitors daily. They house priceless objects in public spaces. Trust, not fortress, underpins them. Insurance practices, provenance research, and cataloging are the art world's defenses. High-value items carry not just monetary insurance but reputational insurance. A famed painting stolen as a blow to a museum's credibility. Yet many institutions rely on outdated security systems and on the hope that their visibility lights on people around details crime. Meanwhile, private collectors live in another stratum, sometimes quietly keeping masterpieces in homes or storage, wheels within wheels. For thieves, however, both institutions and private collections are opportunities, each with different risks and entry points. There is an underground economy that treats art as liquidity. Stolen works are currency, traded for cash, used as barter to pay for drugs or arms, or leveraged as collateral for loans in the underworld. Fences those who buy and resell stolen properties specialize in specific markets, antiquities, modern art, or niche cultural artifacts. They have networks that cross borders and exploit legal gaps. The art trade is global, with legitimate auction houses and private dealers sometimes wittingly are not serving as conduits for illicit objects. Legal frameworks lag behind the flows. Some countries have robust export controls and repatriation efforts. Others have porous borders, lax enforcement, or corrupt officials. Stolen art moves in the cracks. Mislabeling, false provenance, concealment, repackaging. In that world, a masterpiece can become a dossier, then a commodity, then a weapon. The criminals who traffic in art understand the system intimately. The insurance claim side, the shipping logistics, the cataloging mistakes, and they exploit those weak seams. Why steal art? The most obvious and ceremonious, also the least clean. Art is not liquid. Selling a famous painting is perilous. It's famous. It cannot be hung in a living room without attracting attention. So many major heists are motivated by more than a quick profit. Some thieves steal with the intention of selling on the black market through trusted fences. Others steal to order collectors who commission thefts to acquire a specific work illegally. A small subset steals for revenge, ideology, or to make a statement. There are also thieves who steal for the joy of possession, or to rent the work back to institutions for a fraction of market value. Economically, most of the $500 million in stolen art is unrecoverable precisely because the market for such famous pieces is limited. The objects are too recognizable to resell openly. So the theft calculus is complex: maximize value, minimize traceability, and find buyers willing to blur legality for access. Every great theft has a sequence of decisions that, in aggregate, create a success. The story we narrate here follows a notorious real-world template. Months of reconnaissance, inside access, or inside information. Patient logistics, and an execution that exploited assumptions, especially the assumption that great museums could not be struck without cameras and guards capturing everything. A small team began their operation months in advance. They did the routine of amateur thieves and the rituals of professional thieves alike. They visited the museum at different hours, observed guard patterns, photographed security cameras and lighting, and mapped blueprints. But this was not only about external observation. The heist's success turned on specific inside knowledge, knowing how an alarm module reset, which doors had delayed sensors, where climate control units could be temporarily disabled without raising red flags. Inside knowledge often comes from insiders. In many high-profile art thefts, museum employees, contractors, temporary staff, or disgruntled workers played roles, whether by leaking shift patterns, providing replica keys, or simply turning a blind eye. Contractors and vendors provide a natural vector for infiltration because they require access to restricted areas. A rigged maintenance schedule, a delayed sensor activation, or even a guard's routine nap becomes an opening. Critical to the $500 million heist was the thieves' study of insurance and cataloging records, knowing which items were currently on loan, which were in high demand, and which had been minimally documented allowed them to prioritize targets. Some works had been photographed at low resolution or miscatalogued in inventories. Their move would create a delay before anyone realized exactly what was missing. Complex loan arrangements where items are moved between institutions are shown. Seasonally also make real-time knowledge of location mark. The night of the theft was clean and methodical. The thieves staged small diversions, odd noises, timed dips in local power, or even a staged fight outside the museum to pull security resources and attention away from their chosen galleries. In one version of the heist, a local power outage simultaneously triggered multiple minor issues across nearby blocks, complicating the response. Security teams ran to check peripheral alarms. Cameras looped older footage, while technicians reset systems. The actual removal of masterpieces was surgical. Paintings were removed from walls with specialized tools that minimize frame stress. Glass covers removed by hand, and the object placed in cases or flat-pack crates. Sophisticated thieves know how to remove canvases without damaging the stretcher or the paint. Layers damage reduces value and attracts attention. When sculptures were targeted, they were unbolted from plinths using battery-powered drills and disassembled enough to pass through service exits. Timing was essential. In one notorious scenario, a team entered through the service elevator when scheduled museum maintenance allowed for an unlogged access. They worked in silence, communicating in hand signals. A single phone call and internal staff exercise on a different wing created a legitimate reason for some staff to be absent from their posts. The thieves used the pretext of the exercise to move along planned paths. Where alarms did trigger, thieves anticipated delays before central monitoring would escalate to law enforcement. They understood that in the museum world, a minor motion might be logged and not acted upon for several minutes. They exploited this window. Exiting with stolen art is more dangerous than acquiring it. The team had arranged outward logistics, waiting vehicles with false plates, backpacks and crates that blended with legitimate packing, and secure temporary storage in safe houses designed to mask provenance. In some cases, stolen work was immediately secreted in shipping containers bound for overseas ports, mislabeled as industrial equipment. The key to vanishing is plausibility. Moving works in such a way that they would not raise immediate red flags to customs and transport authorities. The thieves used layered identities shell companies that acquired the artwork, pre-theft on paper, a fake loan agreement, or even forged export permits. For anything crossing an international border, corrupt intermediaries or lax customs provide crucial gaps. The thieves then turned to Fence's trusted brokers who rarely trafficked directly in masterpieces but had experience in laundering high-value goods. Fences operate on trust networks. They have connections to collectors who do not always ask questions, or who prefer to avoid provenance headaches by purchasing through intermediaries. Here, the art becomes a transaction. Some works were sold for fractions of gallery value to deep-pocket collectors who wanted discretion and were willing to take on legal risk. Other pieces were used to collateralize loans to criminal enterprises, effectively turning art into a credit instrument in another illicit trade. The firestorm of media attention that followed the theft seemed to promise swift resolution, but investigations often devolved into chasing shadows. Security camera footage yielded blurry images or looped segments. Witness statements were inconsistent. Auction houses received anonymous consignments. Jurisdictions blamed each other. In many cases, investigators were simply outgunned. They lacked the international reach of the thieves' networks and the resources to chase every lead in dozens of countries. When the museums filed insurance claims, they triggered another set of motives and complications. Insurers hired private investigators, who sometimes uncovered undercover networks. But insurers also had incentives to keep claims low and avoid public scandal. In some cases, institutions accepted settlements rather than prolonged litigation, which, while practical, closed avenues for criminal prosecutions. Investigators did identify a few crate with the wrong paperwork, an interior designer with suspicious tastes, or a known smuggler in a port city who had purchased art grey market in earlier cases, but none led to the masterpieces themselves. Some suspects were arrested for peripheral crimes. Others were freed due to lack of admissible evidence. The masterpieces, however, remained ghosts. Art heists rarely follow a single path from theft to recovery. Twists, in this case, included internal betrayal, misleading leads, corrupt officials, and the occasional fragmentary recovery. Art could surface years later, untraceable, sometimes repainted or recut. The thieves exploited human error, legal loopholes, and the global black market's opacity. Multiple hypotheses arose. Professional criminal network with insider help, commission theft by a private buyer, opportunistic organized crime using art as collateral. Inside job with minimal external contact. Recovery is hard due to fame, alteration, international jurisdiction gaps, collector secrecy, and time. Human and cultural tolls were immense. Museums faced scrutiny, curators' careers were affected, and public trust diminished. Even recovered works rarely closed the case. The $500 million heist reshaped museum security worldwide. Institutions implemented 24/7 guards, retrofitted alarms, and strengthened loans and cataloging protocols. Yet, the majority of stolen works remain missing. The case demonstrates vulnerabilities in cultural preservation and the ingenuity of professional thieves. Ultimately, the theft leaves open questions. Who stole these masterpieces? Where are they now? And why have most never been recovered? Empty frames hang as silent reminders of a crime that transcended money. Art became a weapon, a bargaining chip, and a ghost haunting the public imagination.